It was supposed to be a new beginning. After years of hard work, I had finally landed my dream job at a reputable company, complete with a salary that allowed me to live comfortably. I moved into a cozy new apartment in the heart of the city, eager to make it my own. As I stood in my empty bedroom, I made a mental checklist of everything I needed to turn it into a sanctuary: curtains, a bed frame, a rug, and maybe some artwork. But what I really wanted was a statement piece, something that would make my room stand out. That's when I found it. One late night, scrolling through an online marketplace, I stumbled upon a mirror. It wasn't just any mirror. It had an antique, ornate frame with intricate carvings that seemed to whisper stories of its past. The seller's description read, "Vintage mirror, one of a kind, a perfect addition to your home." The price was surprisingly low, and though I hesitated for a moment, I convinced myself it was a steal. The mirror arrived a few days later, wrapped in layers of bubble wrap and tape. I felt a strange thrill as I unboxed it. The craftsmanship was even more beautiful in person, the frame gleaming as if it had been freshly polished. I wasted no time hanging it on the wall opposite my bed. For the first few days, everything was normal. I'd glance at my reflection each morning as I got ready for work, admiring how the mirror made the room feel larger and brighter. But then things started to change. It began subtly. One morning, as I was adjusting my tie in front of the mirror, I saw something odd. My reflection seemed off, not in appearance, but in action. While I was still tying my tie, my reflection had already finished and was reaching for my jacket. I blinked, chalking it up to a trick of the light or my overactive imagination. But it kept happening. The mirror would show me snippets of events that hadn't occurred yet. At first, they were mundane: me receiving a text, a coworker spilling coffee. But then the visions became more significant. The moment that convinced me I wasn't imagining things happened at work. That morning, the mirror had shown me an image of my boss, Mr. Carter, standing in the conference room, shaking hands with a client. In the vision, he was wearing his signature navy suit and red tie, his face lit up with triumph. But as the vision continued, his expression faltered, and I saw him clutch his chest before collapsing to the floor. When I arrived at the office that day, the scene unfolded exactly as I seen it. The handshake, the suit, the triumphant smile. It was all identical. My heart raced as I realized what was about to happen. Should I warn him? Could I even stop it? The moment I saw the vision in the mirror, my chest tightened with a suffocating mix of disbelief and dread. Could this really be happening? Was the mirror showing me the future? And if so, what did it mean for me? As I sat on the edge of my bed, staring into the ornate frame, I replayed the vision over and over in my mind. Mr. Carter, my boss, shaking hands with the client, his face glowing with triumph, only for that glow to fade as he clutched his chest and collapsed. The image was seared into my brain, as vivid as if I had been standing in the room with him. I tried to brush it off, to convince myself it was just an overactive imagination fed by too much coffee and too little sleep. But when I arrived at the office that morning and saw Mr. Carter in his navy suit and red tie, the exact outfit from the vision, my heart sank. It was happening. The realization hit me like a freight train. I had seen this before it happened. I knew what was coming. But what could I do? Should I tell him? How could I possibly explain what I seen without sounding completely insane? "Good morning, Mr. Carter. By the way, my magical mirror told me you're going to have a heart attack after signing that contract." Yeah, that would go over well. Even if I did try to warn him, would he believe me? Or would he laugh it off as a bad joke? Option one, say nothing. I could keep my mouth shut and let events unfold as they would. After all, who was I to interfere with fate? But the idea of standing by and doing nothing, knowing that something terrible was about to happen, made my stomach churn. Could I live with myself if I stayed silent? Option 2, warn him. But how? How could I possibly explain what I seen without sounding like I'd lost my mind? Good morning, Mr. Carter. By the way, my magical mirror told me you're going to have a heart attack after signing that contract. Yeah, that would go over well. Even if I did try to warn him, would he believe me? Or would he laugh it off as a bad joke? Option 3, subtle intervention. Maybe I didn't need to explain everything. Maybe I could find a way to subtly steer him away from the situation without revealing the truth. I could distract him, delay the meeting, or come up with some excuse to keep him out of that conference room. But what if my interference caused something worse to happen? The weight of the decision pressed down on me, making it hard to breathe. I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, staring into an abyss of uncertainty. No matter what I chose, the consequences were terrifying. Finally, as the clock ticked closer to the meeting time, I made my decision. I couldn't stand by and do nothing, even if it meant risking my reputation. Even if Mr. Carter thought I was out of my mind, I had to say something. The attempt to warn Mr. Carter. I waited until Mr. Carter was alone in his office, reviewing the contract one last time before the meeting. My hands were clammy, my heart pounding in my chest as I knocked on the door. "Come in," he called, his voice calm and steady. I stepped inside, trying to look as composed as possible. "Mr. Carter, do you have a minute?" He looked up from the papers on his desk, his brow furrowing slightly. "Is everything all right?" I hesitated, the words catching in my throat. How could I phrase this without sounding completely unhinged? I just have a bad feeling about this contract," I blurted out. He raised an eyebrow. "A bad feeling? What do you mean?" I know it sounds strange, but I have a gut instinct that something isn't right. Maybe it's the terms of the deal or the client's intentions, but I think you should take a closer look before signing anything. Mr. Carter frowned, leaning back in his chair. "That's quite an accusation. Do you have any specific concerns, or is this just a hunch?" I swallowed hard. "It's just a hunch, but I really think you should be careful. Maybe postpone the signing until you've had more time to review everything." He studied me for a long moment, his gaze sharp and calculating. "I appreciate your concern, but I've reviewed this contract thoroughly. It's a great opportunity for the company, and I'm confident in my decision." I opened my mouth to argue, but the look on his face told me it was pointless. He had already made up his mind. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention," he said, his tone polite but firm. "But I've got it under control." I nodded, my heart sinking as I left his office. I had tried. I had done everything I could without revealing the truth. But as I walked back to my desk, I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't enough. The meeting unfolded exactly as the mirror had shown. Mr. Carter shook hands with the client, his face glowing with pride as they finalized the deal. But moments later, his expression faltered. His hand flew to his chest, his body swaying as he gasped for air. I watched in horror as he collapsed to the floor, just as I had seen in the mirror. Chaos erupted in the conference room as people rushed to his side, calling for help. In the end, Mr. Carter survived. The paramedics arrived in time to stabilize him, and it was determined that he had suffered a mild heart attack brought on by stress. But the experience shook me to my core. The mirror had been right. It had shown me the future, and despite my best efforts, I hadn't been able to change it. This pivotal moment deepens the protagonist's connection to the mirror and their growing fear of its power. The days following Mr. Carter's heart attack were a blur of unease and sleepless nights. Every time I looked at the mirror, I couldn't help but feel a twisting knot of dread in my stomach. I had no doubt now that it was no ordinary mirror. It wasn't just showing reflections. It was displaying the future. And yet, I couldn't decide if that was a gift or a curse. The visions became more frequent after that. Every morning, I would see glimpses of events yet to come. Sometimes trivial, like a coffee spill in the break room, and sometimes ominous, like a car accident outside my apartment. Each time, the scenes played out exactly as the mirror had shown, no matter what I tried to do to intervene. But it wasn't just the visions that unsettled me. At night, the mirror seemed to take on a life of its own. It started with small things, faint creaking sounds, like someone walking across the floor of my room, even though I was alone. Then one night, I woke to the sound of a loud thud. I bolted upright in bed, my heart pounding in my chest. The mirror had fallen from the wall, landing face down on the floor. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at it in the dim light of my bedside lamp, too afraid to move. Finally, I forced myself out of bed and approached the mirror. My hands trembled as I reached down to pick it up, but just as my fingers touched the frame, a chill ran down my spine. It felt unnaturally cold, as if it had been sitting in a freezer. I propped it back on the wall, securing it as best I could, and crawled back into bed. But sleep wouldn't come. Every creak, every shadow, every flicker of light from outside sent my heart racing. The next night, the disturbances grew worse. I woke again to the sound of footsteps, this time louder, heavier. It sounded like someone pacing back and forth across the room. My breath caught in my throat as I sat up, scanning the darkness for any sign of an intruder. Then I saw it. A faint outline, almost like a shadow, moving in front of the mirror. It was shaped like a person, but its movements were jerky and unnatural, like a puppet on strings. I froze, my body paralyzed with fear as the figure seemed to turn toward me. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it was gone. The next morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my emails, searching for the contact information of the online vendor who had sold me the mirror. I fired off a frantic message. "Hi, I bought a mirror from you recently, and I need to know if there's anything unusual about it. Strange things have been happening, and I need answers." I wasn't expecting a response. After all, who would admit to selling a haunted mirror? But to my surprise, the vendor replied within an hour. "The mirror is not for everyone. If you can't handle it, you need to pass it on to someone else. That's the only way." Pass it on? I stared at the message, the words sinking in like lead. What did they mean, pass it on? I couldn't just dump this problem on someone else. That wasn't right. But if I couldn't get rid of it, what was I supposed to do? That night, I decided I'd had enough. I wasn't going to let this thing control my life any longer. I took the mirror off the wall, wrapped it in an old blanket, and carried it down to the dumpster behind my apartment. With a deep breath, I tossed it in and walked away, feeling a strange mix of relief and guilt. But when I returned to my room, my blood ran cold. The mirror was back. It was hanging on the wall, exactly where it had been before, as if I had never touched it. My stomach churned and I stumbled back a step, my mind racing. How was this possible? Had I imagined throwing it away? I knew then that I couldn't handle this alone. I needed help. The next day, the mirror showed me a new vision. This time, it wasn't of a future event. It was of me. I saw myself standing in a church, surrounded by my pastor and a group of prayer warriors. They were praying over the mirror, their voices rising in unison as it cracked and splintered before vanishing in a burst of light. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew I had to follow the vision. I called my pastor and explained everything: the visions, the nightly disturbances, the mirror's defiance. To my surprise, he didn't dismiss me as crazy. Instead, he agreed to help. That night, we gathered in the church. The pastor anointed the mirror with oil, his voice steady as he prayed for protection. The prayer warriors joined in, their voices filling the room with a powerful energy. But then, something happened that none of us could have anticipated. The mirror began to crack, the sound sharp and piercing like glass shattering under immense pressure. A red cloth seemed to materialize out of thin air, draping itself over the mirror. Beneath the cloth, the outline of a humanoid figure began to form, its presence radiating an overwhelming sense of malice. It pointed at me, its finger long and bony, and began to speak in a language I couldn't understand. The words were guttural and harsh, each one sending a jolt of fear through my body. One of the prayer warriors grabbed a handful of salt and threw it at the mirror. The moment the salt made contact, a deafening scream filled the air, and the mirror burst into flames. When the flames died down, the mirror was gone. There was nothing left but a faint smell of smoke and a strange, heavy silence. I never bought anything online again after that. I couldn't even bring myself to look at another mirror for weeks. The experience had shaken me to my core, leaving me with a deep-seated fear of the unknown. But more than that, it had taught me a valuable lesson. Some things are better left alone. The mirror was gone, but the memories remained, etched into my mind like the carvings on its ornate frame. And though I had moved on with my life, a part of me would always wonder, where had the mirror gone, and who would it find next? Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and tell us where you are watching us from.